So now before we dive into the next module, where we dive right into the language, let me dive a bit deeper into the history of JavaScript and where it's coming from. And there, let's also have a look at that comparison between JavaScript and Java again. Now, Java and JavaScript are two totally independent programming languages. That's really important. They have a totally different syntax, different principles. They have almost nothing in common besides the name, I would say. Also, JavaScript runs in the browser, and as you learned, also in other environments. Java does not run in the browser. You can use it on the server side to render HTML dynamically there and send it back to users. You can also use it in a non-web development context, but it is not supported directly in the browser. You can't use it for the same things as you can use JavaScript. You also, as I mentioned, have different principles. Java, for example, is strictly object-oriented and strongly typed. There, you need to define which kind of data you're about to store in a data container. Whereas JavaScript is really flexible. You don't have to work with objects only there, and we'll dive into object orientation and what that means throughout the course, no worries. And it's also weakly typed, as you learn. Now, JavaScript was named JavaScript to sound cool, you could say, because Java was a big thing, and JavaScript kind of was inspired by it, but is totally different then in the end. And, well, people just wanted to have other people use JavaScript, I guess. Java does not run the browser, as I mentioned, though. That's really important to keep in mind. JavaScript does. And speaking about that differentiation between client-side and server-side JavaScript, client-side means in the browser, server-side, with the help of Node.js, means on a machine that is connected to the internet, which might be serving web pages, but which doesn't run code directly on the machines of the end users. And the client-side part is really the origin of JavaScript. And as you learn, different browser vendors, so different companies developing browsers, provide their own JavaScript execution engines. For example, the V8 engine, that's the name of the JavaScript engine Chrome uses. And the important thing there is that in the browser, you are able to interact with the web page from inside JavaScript. You can manipulate the loaded web page. You can also use certain browser features, so-called APIs, for example, to get the user location. On the server side, the idea was to, well, extract the engine out of the browser and allow you to run it outside of the browser so that you can reuse your JavaScript knowledge, but now use JavaScript for different tasks. And you can now run JavaScript anywhere with Node.js, for example, on a server side. And there you have special other features, other APIs you can tap in, for example, to work with the file system or handle incoming HTTP requests. Now, the syntax, concepts, and core features are exactly the same though. Therefore, what you learn in this course, where we primarily focus on the browser side, since it's simply also easier and more visual to use, are the same. What you learn in the browser applies to Node.js and other environments as well, as you will also see in the Node.js section. So that's why we start with the browser side. It's JavaScript's origin. There are no alternatives to JavaScript in the browser, so you might not be interested in using JavaScript on a server. If you are interested in front-end, in browser-side web development though, you have to learn JavaScript because that is the only programming language you can use there in the end. You can then transfer your knowledge because Node.js uses the same syntax, so you easily learn Node.js after learning JavaScript in general or in the browser. And it's more fun to learn JavaScript if you see something on the page.